All right, Wiz. So we said we weren't doing any more agent frameworks, and we're still kind of not. Okay, so we have Claude Code. It's an agent that writes code. And now we have Claude Agent SDK, an open source framework that runs Claude Code. It helps us build agents from agents. We're kind of entering the meta zone here. What's going on with Claude Agent SDK?
Yeah, we're in the Claude verse now.
Okay.
We are no longer we have stepped above the agent framework into the agent framework.
Oh,
And
meta agent framework.
meta
Okay, here we go.
agent framework. We are using a tool to coordinate and manipulate a agent, right? So a system that already kind of does things. We have the ability to change its behavior, to augment its behavior, to set instances of it off via an SDK. So all the stuff that we expect from a framework, but instead of hitting an LLM, we're actually hitting an agent.
Yeah, I noticed when I was trying to visualize this today, within my agent loop, there's sneaky agents. And so it posed quite an issue. And I came to understand why Claude and their agent SDK agent loop looks the way it does.
That's right.
So it is quite, is that a multi-agent system or is that an agent we get into this weird place. Now, also, is it like super dope? Is this a new agent framework that everybody should be using?
I mean, maybe it's
Yeah.
definitely one of them. It's definitely powerful. So, is it like everyone should use this all the time? I don't think so. But it definitely has its uses. It definitely can be used to build kind of quite complex systems, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah. They dropped some heat. This came out this week. So we are getting some hands-on time. You're going to walk us through the examples today, and I'll take everybody through the blog. You ready to get into it?
Couldn't be more ready.
All right. This should be a fun one. Let's kick it off. Thanks, Wiz. All right, everybody. Welcome to Claude Agent SDK. As always, if you got questions along the way, please throw them directly into the YouTube live chat or into a comment on your viewing platform. We're going to really dig into the meta-ness of this new Agent SDK. It's not the Agents SDK, it's the Agent SDK. We still think there's a role for orchestration frameworks like LangGraph. How does all of this come together? How is the Claude Code SDK now the Claude Agent SDK? We are going to get a little bit meta in the discussions today. We'd love for you to join us. Let's go ahead and start digging in. If you join us for the next hour, as always, we're going to tell you what you're going to get out of this. You're going to sort of understand how this Claude Agent SDK was, in fact, a natural progression. It's not quite the same as looking at the OpenAI Agents SDK from the OpenAI API through the Responses API. It's quite different. As many of us know, Anthropic has been focused on code for quite a long time, and now they're sort of expanding into the additional everything space of AI, kind of part and parcel of the entire AI community right now. We want to understand their agent loop and how it is probably another layer of abstraction. And then we want to, of course, understand how this compares to the classics. We're going to build, ship, and share with some Claude Agent SDK action. And so let's introduce the Agent SDK and the loop, all in context. From the blog this week, Building Agents with the Claude Agent SDK. The Claude Agent SDK is a collection of tools that helps developers build powerful agents on top of Claude Code. Dope. Last year, we shared lessons in building effective agents alongside our customers. Since then, we've released Claude Code, an agentic coding solution that we originally built to support developer productivity at Anthropic. Now, what's that bit about building effective agents from last year? Well, that was from December 2024. And what they said is, well, we worked with dozens of teams building LLM agents across industries. Consistently, the most successful implementations use simple composable patterns. Yawn, yawn, yawn. What's interesting here then? Well, if we look at kind of the summary, the takeaway, the high level, you want to build what you need. You want it to be simple. You want it to be transparent. You want to make sure that you're testing it. And you shouldn't hesitate to reduce abstraction layers. You should constantly be pushing towards simplicity. Still kind of yawn here. So what's the key insight from that last blog? Well, what they go on to mention in this week's blog is that Claude Code has become far more than a coding tool. At Anthropic, specifically, for the people that work there, they've been using it for deep research, for video creation, for note-taking, and tons of other non-coding applications. This is interesting because this is actually how the Anthropic team uses Claude Code. This is from July of this past year. Quote, while many of the use cases for the coding agent were predictable, debugging, navigating code bases, others surprised us. Lawyers built phone tree systems. Marketers generated hundreds of ad variations in seconds. Data scientists created complex visualizations without knowing JavaScript. Pattern became clear. Agentic coding isn't just accelerating traditional development, it's dissolving the boundary between technical and non-technical work. It's dissolving the boundary. That is to say, anyone who can describe a problem can build a solution. This is quite meta, and it was reminiscent to me of work that I've been following for many years from Stephen Wolfram. He describes this idea of computational thinking, essentially the idea of formulating things with enough clarity and in a systematic enough way that one can tell a computer how to do them. This, as you'll notice, is from an article from 2016. As a complexity researcher, Wolfram has shown that very simple rules lead up to extremely complicated, extremely complex behavior. And perhaps we can get some insight into how coding agents lead to more effective agents in general. The very simple rules that define how we govern and improve code perhaps are those same rules that govern and define broader scope behavior across many domains. In fact, that's exactly what we see with the Claude team, the Anthropic team within their company. In how Anthropic teams use Claude Code, we see when you focus on the human workflows that it can augment, we can really get a lot out of this coding agent to do many other incredible things. So, Wiz, let's have a quick discussion about this here. I thought that Claude Code was for writing code. How is it that lawyers are using this exactly to do stuff?
I mean, we use it to write code. It's called Claude Code, right? But there's nothing that it would imply it doesn't work with any other piece of writing or documents, or we already know that Claude Code and Anthropic are, you know, very favorable to the MCP format, right? So that's their protocol. At the end of the day, you know, all of this is basically just exposing a way to interact with different pieces of context and produce different written materials, right? So there's no, even though obviously like the thing in mind is code, right? It doesn't mean that it has to stay limited to that. We can kind of push it outside of that that boundary.
By just what? Speaking to it in natural language? That's kind of what, let's say, the Anthropic team was doing across teams. Is that sort of?
I mean, why not? Yeah, like it's at the end of the day, it's a text in, text out machine, right? If you can describe the problem, if you can, you know, if it's a task that the base models are good at, then
Yeah.
there's no reason it shouldn't just nail it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we go back to what they sort of were talking about in December of last year, they kind of said, well, it's about building the right system for your needs. Start with simple prompts, optimize them with evaluation, and you know the sort of examples that they're kind of talking about as, you know, the capabilities that people have been able to kind of put together is like they're using it for deep research. They're using it for video creation. They're using it for note taking. They're using it for lawyers to help route calls within their legal department. I mean, are they hitting up a coder and saying, I got this far, I vibe coded my way into a rat hole. Can you help me here? Probably.
I mean, no, right? Because you can use Claude Code itself to do these things, right? Like
And Claude Code is connected to their context and
that's right,
their systems
and they're
internally.
tools, right? So if you think about something like MCP, right? There's no burden for MCP to be like, oh well, MCP can only have tools related to code, right? Like if you
Yeah.
have a tool that you've built to ingest legal documents, right? Just as an example, or to
Yeah,
ingest
sure.
your calendar, or to ingest whatever it is, right? Then you can then extend Claude Code's functionality to those other domains, right? At the end of the day, it's a reasoning model. It reasons about the inputs and then it produces some output. And it's good at legal. It's good at answering emails and stuff, you know, to simplify. But the
Yeah.
idea is that this is the way I would think about it. That Claude Code it's not misnamed. It's primarily for code and it's built for code. But you can certainly use it for more than that. And with, I mean, the whole point of today, the Agent SDK, right?
Yeah.
You can extend into these other domains and help it be better and more proficient at those tasks than just code.
Yeah. So I mean, when we talk about the non-technical users at Anthropic using Claude Code, we can sort of imagine they're kind of living in the metaverse a little bit already. They're sort of living in the meta AI verse, let's say. Let's not conflate terms here. Where it's like their AI system is connected to their data, is connected to their engineering teams, is connected implicitly like electricity through their company. And so they can probably slightly more seamlessly build, ship, and share agentic apps that help their company than probably the rest of us. They're sort of attached to, let's say, let's call it the harness of exactly how applications get built, via Claude Code at Anthropic.
I would say that's 150% correct, right? They live in the ecosystem that creates the tool, right? They the moment it's like, oh well, I found it to be slightly useful for X, Y, or Z, suddenly there's motivation for the team to add a tool for them or add a, we're guessing, right?
Sure.
None of us work in this ecosystem, but the
That's
idea
right.
would be if your legal team came to you and said, "Hey, I was using this for like editing Markdown. It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
Like, can I attach it something better?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
answer is like, "Heck yeah, you can, bro."
Yeah, like I was doing this thing and it kind of pisses me off. I'd like it to be automated and I
Yeah.
started messing with it and it seems like it can work. Can you help me push it through?
And
And
then
it's like,
suddenly it's like, "Oh, sure." And then suddenly it's like, "Well, maybe we should build this in a way that makes it easy for Claude Code to ingest these documents and
yeah,
every, and now we are where we are." And I think it's very helpful to keep in mind that we we have done a lot of kind of prep work for this. When I say we, I mean like the ecosystem, by making our systems very good at instruction following, very good at tool calling, right? At the end of the day, that's what we need in order to add these functionalities. So it's not surprising that we can extend past just what's on the tin in this case.
that's right. Okay, so from finance to personal assistance to customer support to deep research, Claude and the Anthropic team is doing this not just with their customers but internally in their own company, and this is from whence all this sort of came. Okay. Cool. Let's keep it moving. Thanks, Wiz. All right. So if we keep this in mind, we can sort of imagine then, as we continue on in the blog here, the agent harness that powers Claude Code can power many other types of agents too. This is the whole idea. To reflect this sort of broader vision of Claude Code, we get this rebrand, we get this rename from Claude Code SDK to Claude Agent SDK. Now, many of you that follow our content closely may be familiar that we've been talking about this agent definition recently from Simon Willison. This is from his blog on September 18th, where he's finally, okay, we've got an agent definition that's acceptable. It's an LLM. An LLM agent runs tools in a loop to achieve a goal. Now, this is interesting because, obviously Claude and the team at Claude and Anthropic have, been thinking about what are agents as well. And this is from 2024, where they say some customers kind of define agents as fully autonomous systems that operate independently over extended periods using various tools. And some of them are more prescriptive and predefined, workflows versus agents, a classic. Now, later on in 2025, as Simon points out in his blog, the prompting for agents workshops and Anthropic's team actually did buck the trend here of sort of not defining agents precisely and saying agents are models using tools in a loop. Now, when Simon dropped this new definition, we had a little conversation going on X with Wiz and Simon. And the in a loop piece is kind of interesting because that's, as Simon says, a shortcut for saying the LLM harness spots the tool call request, executes the tool, and then calls the LLM again with the result of that tool call. Now, the TLDR on what the heck harness means is harness is approximately equal to framework, the agent harness, the agent framework. But it's not exactly that. We'll come back to that. For now, let's talk about the in a loop bit that made us talk about this harness. Let's go deeper so we can come back up and go wider. If you've followed our content, you've seen this diagram before. You ask a question to the agent takes an action. We might kind of have enough there to be able to produce the response. The action is going to be some kind of tool call, some kind of function call from which we'll observe some result, the observation, and then we'll feed that result back into the conversation thread. Let's consider what the Claude Agent SDK loop looks like. The Claude Agent SDK loop starts by gathering context, which if it sounds agentic, that's because it is. It moves on to taking actions. Now, this is maybe more of a meta action, as we'll see. Finally, instead of just observing, we're actually doing verification, which probably requires a little bit of reasoning in and of itself. And then we repeat. So let's dig into each of these components and walk through what might constitute gathering context, taking action, and verifying work. When we talk about gathering context, we're talking about moving beyond prompt engineering. We're talking about being able to fetch and update context. That's going to require agentic reasoning and action in and of itself. This can take the form of a number of different processes. First of which we might consider just doing search, literally searching through our files. Agentic search and the file system represents, the file system itself is basically all the information we could pull into the model's context. We obviously don't want all of it at once because of limits on the context window and limits on performance and managing context. Interestingly, there was another blog drop the exact same day as building agents with the Claude SDK called Managing Context on the Claude developer platform, which goes into some additional detail, which we will get to shortly. Beyond the file system and doing agentic search on the file system, we can gather context through semantic search. Now, they link their idea of contextual retrieval, which is sort of a next level way to do RAG. It sort of enhances context in additional ways beyond simply doing retrieval. This is something we've covered on this channel before. If you're interested in learning more about their contextual retrieval process, check that one out. But the big idea here is basically you can kind of just do RAG. It involves chunking the relevant context, embedding these chunks as vectors, and then searching for concepts. So RAG is just one way to gather context. But it goes on. Sub-agents are additional ways to gather context. We can really do a lot of parallelized searching work. As we've seen, this is one of their key insights from building their deep research system. And sub-agents can also help to manage context well, splitting up tasks, responsibilities. And there are some cool sub-agents, including, this is from their docs today. I love to see this. The data scientist sub-agent. That's right. AutoML is finally here. The coding agents are, of course, able to do coding that anybody that does coding can do, especially if you're doing it within the context of a single Jupyter notebook, let's say, or a single SQL database. Now, it's not just sub-agents. It's not just RAG or extra super special RAG. It's not just agentic search through the file system. There's also this idea of managing the context through summarization, through pruning, through generally what they're calling compaction here. And this is something we've talked about recently on the channel. When it comes to context engineering, people that build coding agents are thinking about this a lot. This is from their blog on how they built their multi-agent research system. Agents often engage in conversations spanning hundreds of turns. Or as the Manus team teaches us, context just becomes long and we need to shorten it. That's lessons from building their autonomous software engineer, Manus. Or as the Chroma team learned, context rot is a real thing. By putting just more stuff in context, we don't get better answers. We actually get worse answers. It was a very fun thing they did, which they basically said, how many times can we make an LLM just repeat words by paying attention to one or two kind of differences like this replicate the following text: apple, 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 apples, apple, apple, apple. How many times can you have an LLM do this? It turns out that over the course of putting many thousands, maybe 5 or so thousand tokens in context, and kind of running through these simple, ostensibly quite easy to replicate and compute prompts, you get weird results. Like, I didn't tell you to take a break. I didn't tell you to tell me what kind of mood you were in. I didn't tell you to tell me when you needed to chill out. I told you to just say apple. And so we get very interesting, weird stuff when we have to deal with not managing context properly. This is context rot. And so when we gather context, we need to be aware of enhancing it, but also of summarizing it, of pruning it, of doing all of the most important things. We got to use RAG. Maybe we enhance the RAG. We got to use search, but we got to find the right files. And we got to be aware of how long the context get. Of course, as we know, everything that makes agents good is context engineering. And it's not just simple prompt anymore, because prompt engineering has been subsumed by context engineering. Of course, this is your number one job now in 2026. Maybe we'll not change the name, but AI engineer will effectively mean context engineer. And that means filling the context window with the right information for the next step, always. Okay, so step 2, after we gather context, which is by no means trivial, is to take action. And we kind of did already take a bunch of actions. So what does this mean? Well, let's take a look. It means tools. These are the primary building blocks. In fact, it's just tools in a loop after all, right? Now, we should be conscious of how we design tools to maximize context efficiency. In fact, there's a great blog on writing effective tools for agents released just a few weeks ago by Anthropic. And they have a great email. It's not that exciting email example throughout the blog. So there's tools, but there's also just automated things that we can have a computer do that aren't necessarily things that require an LLM reasoning head on top of them, like just scripts. Hey, run this. And there's also, of course, we're talking about Claude Code, code gen. And I really like this idea of when you're building agents, consider which tasks would benefit from being expressed as code. I've personally been watching the way reasoning models, decide to write code in specific circumstances. And it's quite interesting sometimes to kind of just attend to this. We know that if it can be expressed in code, it's probably going to be well expressed by something like Claude Code. Again, this Agent SDK is leveraging the Claude Code agent itself. And alas, let's not forget about MCP. We can connect our agents to tools that are not just simple function calling APIs, but they're kind of more like a whole suite of potential tools that connect to larger applications like Slack, like GitHub, like Google Drive, without having to write any custom anything. And of course, who would you want to use MCP through if not the people who invented MCP? Lastly, the third piece is to verify the work. Now, this is obviously very important. Agents that can check and improve their own work are fundamentally more reliable. Really, that's true for humans too, and true for basically all processes. What are we talking about when we're talking about verifying work? Well, we're talking, of course, about evals. We're talking about measuring, did we do a good job or not? How can we improve? This is from Shreya, famously teacher of the evals course, the most popular course on Maven right now. Or evaluation is another way to think about this. is from the RAGAS team, the RAG assessment team, is about measuring how effectively your system achieves its intended goals. Quantify the system against clear objectives to really make sure your verification and your evaluation is going well. And of course, we talked about kind of the difference between verification and validation and evaluation on a recent event when we talked about guardrails with Shreya from Guardrails, different Shreya. And so this kind of taking action piece that is then followed by the third evaluate and verify piece. This is all really to be taken kind of together. The key is to really give Claude very concrete ways to do this final evaluation. Did I call the right tool? Did I get the right stuff? Am I focused on the goal? And, this piece can also take a number of different forms, this evaluation piece. The best form, perhaps interestingly, is a clearly defined set of rules for assessing the output. That makes sense. And then it's like, well, did the tests pass? If not, like, we should change either something about what caused that output or maybe the tests themselves. Code linting is just the process of running a program that will analyze code for potential errors. So we want, again, to work on this meta layer here, this testing layer, this evaluation, this validation, this verification layer. Of course, there's also visual feedback. And as we get more multimodal, this will perhaps become more interesting and more prevalent. So this is their email example. You could imagine taking a screenshot of the email, but especially if it is something visual, you can look at the layout, the styling, and then get into the weeds of the actual text output. And of course, everybody's favorite evaluation or maybe scaling evaluation method, using the LLM as a judge. I really like their language on this. They say, have another language model judge the output of your agent based on fuzzy rules. Generally not very robust, but if you feel like maybe you can get a boost in performance, maybe you should. So the loop is like this, and it's pretty meta because it kind of goes beyond our more simple loop here, where we're kind of literally just kind of gathering context. We are taking action. We are kind of observing and assessing. We are sort of going through this reasoning action, but if we sort of try to extend this directly, this whole loop kind of gets subsumed a little bit within the gathering context because we have to do agentic search. Maybe we'll do some RAG and tool calling of RAG. Maybe we'll call some other agents. Maybe we'll actually do some specific summarization or pruning to compact what's in context. So really, it doesn't quite align anymore, although take action and verify work. So, I'm working on a new viz for this. Let me know if you have any great ideas, guys. But the key here is, like, after you've done this loop, you need to keep working and test and verify at that higher level. And so this is after the agent loop. Does it have the right tools for the job? That's one question. Maybe you're missing key info. Can you alter the way you're doing search? Maybe it fails at a task repeatedly. Can you add a more formal rule? Maybe it's not fixing its errors well enough. Can you give it better tools? Maybe the performance is super variable. Can you build a representative test set? Can you do evals? So I want to kind of return all this in mind to this idea of an LLM agent runs tools in a loop to achieve a goal. The in a loop is kind of short for saying the harness spots the tool call request, executes the tool, and then calls the LLM again with the result of that tool. So, Wiz, can we talk about this for a moment? Is agent and harness, or is agent framework and harness the same thing? Like, is Claude Agent SDK, the harness that they were using for Claude Code, like they said, but also just another agent framework?
Yeah, so I think there's some. The terminology is almost clear, right? Which is to say that it is definitely so. Like Agent SDK is not a harness, right? Agent SDK is a SDK. It's a way to interact with software, right? So when I think about my Claude Code agent, right? It has some harness that it uses to determine, how to run, how to handle things, how to handle failures, how to decide when to go to the LLM, when to go to a tool call, all of this stuff, right? That's my harness. The framework, the agent framework that we're talking about is the ability to construct that harness, right? So, you could call the agent or the system in which the agent is called and ran. You could call that a harness if you wanted to get real funky with it, right? But at the end of the day, it's what's running it. It's not what's handling the logic or the abstraction, right? So all of this to say, no, harness is not another way of saying agent framework.
Okay.
But you could use an agent agent framework likely has a harness for running the agent, right? SDK, Google's framework has very explicitly this, right? That we kind of have seen in the past, where it's got that runner
the
.py,
runner,
right? And in there contains logic on how to actually execute the agent
or
code.
like the agent executor, or in
Yeah,
LangGraph.
that's right.
Okay.
Close to that. So it's this
So
is
that's
the
like
idea.
a pre-built piece, something like that.
Yeah,
That exists
harness is
within
like
there?
the logic that dictates what's running and how it's running. It's not the logic that dictates like what does the agent do, right? And it's certainly not the code that we would use to determine agent behavior, which is what our framework does, right?
That's
Our
right.
agent framework allows us to define agent behavior. So Claude Agent SDK is much closer to say a framework than it is a harness, though there is, of course, a harness, right, in it. And we know there's running Claude Code, which is we already know as a harness, right? So
Oh, yeah. Well, this sort of going up a layer of abstraction, right? We talk about Lego blocks a lot. A lot of thought leaders talk about Lego blocks here. So we have the Legos here. And I think this was useful for me when we were chatting about this earlier, where like if you have the Legos, you can build, the Millennium Falcon. You could build Claude Code ostensibly, like yourself. It might look like this. It might not actually fly, but you could build something that looked like it. And it seems like Claude Agent SDK kind of gives us the Legos, but they don't come out and give us like the thing that their internal users are using their lawyers are using to automate their system. All the harnesses built into their company. They're not giving us that. They're giving us this sort of Lego block set that is kind of operating at this next layer of abstraction because it has a harness to Claude Code.
I'm gonna actually clarify something.
Yeah.
We can mimic functionality in Claude Code with the Agent SDK, right? Claude Agent SDK. but we can't build Claude Code with it because it invokes Claude Code, right? And so it's like suggesting that we could build a Lego with the Lego, right? And maybe you could build something that resembles a Lego brick, right? Maybe you could get so meta so as to do, but like in reality, you're using the thing, right? We're using Claude. You could use something like LangGraph to build Claude Code, right? Or an analog to it. And Claude Code runs on some so obviously there's code that makes the thing work, right? But we are invoking Claude Code. So while we can definitely recreate Claude Code with Claude Code, right? We're always going to be up that layer of abstraction. So it's important to keep in mind, like, Claude Code's an application.
Yeah.
Right? Like a CLI application. Claude Agent SDK is the way is a framework we can use to build agent tools, right? And that's going to rely on invoking that application functionality versus something like LangGraph, where we're building it from, we're calling it LLM directly. Though you could also call whatever you'd like in LangGraph, of course, but stock, right? We're calling it LLM.
Okay, so if we try to compare Agent SDK to these other frameworks, then it seems like there is a difference.
Yes.
And the difference is the connection to Claude Code, something like that.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. It's coordinating and invoking Claude Code in fun and interesting ways, in new ways that go outside of the bounds of just like typing into the CLI, right? It helps us string together abstractions. It helps us do all of the cool stuff we would kind of want to do, right? Even with other frameworks. And so I would say, like, the big thing to keep in mind is that it's absolutely correct to say it is distinct from other frameworks.
Okay.
Yeah.
As Manny says, in this case, we can't get too meta. So let's see. Can we building? I don't know if I should even call this a multi-agent system with Claude Agent SDK, but Wiz, I'm going to hand it off to you to walk us through what it looks like in the code and show everybody, hopefully, as always, that it's actually not that crazy when we get down into the code.
The code's always the easiest part. Absolutely true in this case as well. People meme when I say that because they're like, oh, well, listen, the code's understanding fundamentally what Greg just tried to explain to us in a half an hour, 40-ish minutes. That's the hard part, right? Right in the API calls. This is the easy part. So what we're going to do is work through did something a little bit different for this event. This is much more close to like a workbook than it is to a demo, because the actual stuff you can do with Claude Code is quite interesting and quite powerful. So we're going to look at some examples. We've got a little table of contents. Also, if you love this documentation, might I recommend you to my doc writer. His name is Claude. Of course, we can't resist being meta, so much of the documentation was written through Claude Code, just to keep us funky fresh. Wall of Importance Classic. This is the first thing we're going to think about. Choosing between query and Claude SDK client. So notice the Python SDK provides two ways to interact with Claude Code, each suited for different use cases. Something else you're going to notice. I'll scroll back up like a jerk here. Sorry for the scrolling. This line right here. This notebook requires Python and Anthropic key. You'll also need Claude Code installed. That's because, again, we're going to run Claude Code through the SDK. We're not just going to run an Anthropic API, right? This is the idea. Okay. So query. This is going to be like our chat completions API. Okay. This is going to be like our, classic. We send a request, we get back a response. It's not going to instantiate a session of Claude Code that can do work for us. So queries are for like one-offs, right? And then Claude SDK client, this is what we wanted to do. Big work. We want to do many big work, to be very crude about it. This is how we'll do it. So let's look at how we would do this. Number one, API key, classic. Claude really wants you to know, don't hard code your API key. Thanks, Claude. Okay. The basic usage with query is very straightforward. We can simply query what is 2 plus 2, right? And then we can get back messages. There we go. Okay. There's no more to it. We can run the example. We get back. Claude says 4. I like Claude. What a legend. There you go. Okay. Number 2, continuous conversations. So we've set up a client. So we start this client, right? And then we just keep hitting it with messages. And you'll notice that we query it, right? The client with a message. And then we query it again. But we don't have to manage memory. Right? This is distinct from something like LangGraph, right? Where we do have to manage memory. This is distinct from something like, every other framework where we do have to manage memory. So the way that we do this is we make sure to just query, and it's going to retain that information for us because we're not interacting with an LLM endpoint that has no idea of state, that has no idea of memory, it has no idea of anything, right? We're dealing with a system that has these things built in. It's a dang agent, right? There you go. Okay. So we can say, what is the capital of France? What is the population? What are some famous landmarks there? And again, we don't have to reiterate that we mean France or that we mean Paris. There you go. Okay. Then we can customize our agent behavior. There's tons of ways we can do this. There's tons of permission modes. These permission modes might feel familiar to you if you're used to Claude Code. And then you'll see this very classic Claude Agent options. And we can add in our options a system prompt, okay? Now, when we invoke our query, you're going to notice that we pass in our prompt as well as our options. Now, this is the way we're going to interface with Claude Code. We're going to give it options. So instead of what we would normally do, which is like set up an agent, right? We don't need to set up an agent. We already have the agent. It's called Claude Code, right? And what we're doing is we're giving Claude Code some options, right? We're overriding things or we're adding things. Again, we can do this Claude Agent options. We can add this preset system prompt, be concise. We can have it, define its accept edits, and then we can allow it some tools. We'll look at the tools a little bit different down the road. But the idea here is that we can say now, create a simple hello.txt file and then pass in these options, right? Which is going to include the right option. And then we can see here that they've created hello.txt file for you. Good job, Claude. And if you're wondering, there it is right there. Wow, what a good guy. Okay. Next, we can talk about setting sources. Just like Claude Code with a Claude.md, right? Claude Agent SDK also has the ability to look at our Claude.mds, right? So we can tell it which ones we want, right? Local, project, user, all of this. And so again, it's just Claude Code, but we're executing it through this SDK. Finally, we can look at creating a file, giving Claude some tools, looking at how Claude uses those tools. Create a file called hello text with hello world in the present working directory. We can see that Claude tries to create the text, but it already exists. If it already exists, then they write it. And then we notice that the file that we created in the previous step now has the contents hello world. Good job, Claude. We love Claude. There you go. Okay. Next, we can actually specialize some agents. So just like this is the confusing part, okay? Just like in Claude Code, where we can build different agents for different tasks, right? Which we can do through markdown files. You can also define them programmatically through the SDK. And then we can create this new option. And this option is called agents. And the agent has an agent definition. And this agent definition, now this is looking pretty familiar, right? I don't know about you guys, but I've seen this once or twice in my days of building these agent systems. We have a description, we have a prompt, we have some tools, and we have a brain. This is the part that's like every other framework, right? The part that's different is that we're not doing this as a standalone. We're adding this as an agent that now Claude Code has access to. So this is a code reviewer agent. It has the ability to read and to grep. If you don't know what grep is, you're in for a ride. Go look at the grep Wikipedia page. It's quite a good read. And you can see here that all we do is we submit a query, and in that query we have our prompt, and then we have our options, and our options defines our entire agent, right? Like the whole agent. And the way that it works is that Claude's going to know to use this agent because we just gave it that agent. We defined the agent well. There you go, right? Then we can look at the code review results. We can build a different agent called a documentation writer. In this case, given rewrite and edit, we have in our Claude.md, we prefer to write documentation that has a lot of emojis. And so indeed, when Claude writes documentation, it's going to include a lot of emojis. Good job, Claude. We love that. Okay. Finally, how do we get multi-agents? Well, it's going to really blow everyone's mind. We simply define more than one agent in our Claude agent options. We define our analyzer and our refactorer. We set them loose on our project, which will analyze and then refactor. Now, this is interesting, right? Because Claude Code is a whole agent. It's got a whole framework, right? It runs in its harness, and it's powered by a framework that understands what to do when. We're able to dynamically take advantage of the fact that both agents are being launched in parallel because they can be, right? This is different to something like, LangGraph, where we have to build this behavior, right? In this case, no way. Hey, you know what? Claude Code is used to running sub-agents. It's just going to pop both of those off at the same time. We'll have a good day. Finally, of course, we have our MCP. You have to add some MCP. Something that's very useful about Claude Code agents is that we can do this MCP initialization at runtime, right? And the way that this works is that we have the ability to define our tools, which these are just calculator tools, classic, right? Just doing some simple math. Then what we're going to do is we're going to run those tools using the MCP server. So we create the SDK MCP server, and then we run it with this MCP server in our agent options. And what it's going to do is that when we execute this, it's going to fire up that MCP server. It's going to expose all these tools, and then Claude's going to be able to understand them. What we're going to do as well is just allow list those tools so that Claude doesn't ask us if it can do calculations. And then we're going to give it a bunch of prompts. And then we're going to see, hey, here's all of the calculations. Also, you can see for the first time that we have this ability to list tools. So when we ask to list tools, we can see all of Claude's tools: read, write, edit, glob, grep, bash, kill, shell, task, to do, write, notebook, edit, / command. And then, of course, all of our MCP tools that were added by us custom. But these are the built-ins, if you're wondering what the built-in tools are. And then, of course, it do calculation because it uses MCP. We love that. Good job, Claude. And the basic idea here is that, again, we're not defining the agent. We're giving it sub-agents and tools. We're asking it to do things, which is distinct from how we build with things like Lang Smith. So you can think of the engine as opposed to just being some LLM. The engine here is our entire Claude Code instance, and this SDK is helping us power and run that engine with the way we want exactly. So that's that. I'm going to, of course, ask you guys to like and subscribe, and of course, ring that bell. And then, we'll make sure to keep you guys abreast of any of the upcoming stuff we've got going on. Ways that you can engage with us. Check out our on-ramp on the old Maverinos, and there you go. All right, back to Dr. Greg, who'll get us into Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Wiz. So let's go ahead and just do a quick wrap here. So we're exploring this space with you guys today, of course. We've ascended, though. We're kind of in this meta zone. Claude Agent SDK is different. The Agent SDK is an SDK for Claude Code. Quote from the team at Anthropic: the agent harness that powers Claude Code, the Claude Code SDK, can power many other types of agents too. To reflect this broader vision, renamed to Claude Agent SDK. It's useful potentially to think about harness versus framework. I'm still playing with this myself. It's useful potentially to think about the loops within the loops of an agent loop. I'm still playing with this myself. But we are in this sort of meta agent framework space now. Welcome to the future, everybody. Wiz, I've got a couple of wrap-up questions that I'd like to start with here. First off, if we think about, we're in the middle of a series right now on this very YouTube channel. If people haven't checked it out, maybe they should. It's called How to Build ChatGPT. We're using OpenAI tools. Could we do like a how to build Claude Code using Claude Agent SDK, similar to like what the team at Open Code is doing, which is also, kind of built by the coiner of context engineering, a lot of coding agent stuff, kind of leading the way in the field here. Is this within the same realm of possibility as what we're doing in how to build ChatGPT?
No, we could do parts of it, right? So the major limitation, of course, is that Claude Code is going to invoke Claude Code, and so we're in this weird meta space.
Lego building a Lego, yeah.
But we can certainly use other tools to build, and then use that to populate our SDK. So the short answer is we could, but it would be super meta.
We're not doing it. Okay,
more meta than even we are used to.
Okay. More meta than today. All right. That sounds like too much for a weekly Wednesday. What do you think this indicates about the future? Maybe we can just start here. I don't see a lot of questions in the chat. Maybe we can start and sort of end here. I mean, we're seeing this, OpenAI copies. Is it Anthropic or Claude now? OpenAI copies Claude copies OpenAI, and vice versa. Everybody sort of continues to converge. What does this indicate to you about where we are, where we're headed into 2026?
Yeah, we're crushing it. I mean, that's really what I feel like. We now have SDKs that run agents instead of LLMs. We've moved up a whole layer of abstraction, right? I mean, when we started the year, which by the way, if you can believe it, it's been a year since we started the year of agents, right?
Yeah.
It really does make you feel like we're in the year of agents when we have this very meta framework of we're now building code tools to help us build tools where the thing we're calling is not just a LLM, but it's an entire agent, right? Like this is an optimistic future, right? With that people.
Yeah, like it's not an LLM we're calling as the agent anymore. It's our autonomous software engineer that we're sort of calling as like the old LLM is the new software engineer, like the old model lab is the new agent lab. The sort of this kind of next layer is I'm not just a LLM. I'm like a LLM with all these tools and I can do all these things. And that's baseline now, not just tokens in, tokens out, not just API call, but like, I have like a job description. I'm not just an in-out machine, like I can do stuff. What do you want me to do, boss? The agents are here.
That's right. And it's beyond. I mean, we used to call LLMs by themselves agents, if you remember this back in the day. But now they're like agents in a way that even Simon Willison could agree based on his definition.
Well, it's getting quite agentic, perhaps more agentic than ever. I'm excited. for the future.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Stay tuned, guys. This is it seems to hearken, the path for maybe all the agent frameworks in 2026. We'll be sure to cover them right here on this channel. Tell your friend if you found this useful, and we'll see you guys next week. Wiz, thanks for the expertise as always. All right, guys, it's time to wrap. Please do leave any questions in the comments directly on the YouTube channel. This has been another AI Makerspace weekly Wednesday YouTube event. And we appreciate your live attendance as we are on a mission to create the world's leading community for people like you who want to build, ship, and share production LLM applications, however agentic those apps might be. If you haven't joined the Discord yet, we got a bunch of cool, competent builders in there. Join us. Start building, shipping, and sharing today for free. And the right place to start is with the AI Engineer Challenge. You'll build, ship, and share your very first LLM application. If you want to kind of accelerate in 2026, check out cohort 9 of our flagship, the AI Engineering Bootcamp. And if you sign up in 2025, you'll get free access to a brand new course that we've launched very softly so far, called the AI Engineer On-Ramp. This is for people coming probably not from a software engineering background. I'll be teaching this with ChatGPT, aka ChatGPT, Dr. Katarina Gawthorpe, and she is the up-and-coming LLM wizard here at AI Makerspace. If you want to get a feel for her style, her vibe, have I got an event for you? In just 45 minutes, we'll be doing a lightning lesson on Maven on vibe coding and AI-assisted development with Cursor. You can get a feel for the up-and-coming talent within AI Makerspace and the brands that you're maybe soon to see on this very YouTube channel. If you're looking to get on the path, join the Discord, sign up for a boot camp, join an on-ramp, or reach out to me or our team directly with details about your team and what you're trying to accomplish in 2026. With that, we'll call it a day, guys. It's been a pleasure serving you as always. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Until then, keep building, shipping, and sharing, and we'll do the same. Bye, everybody.
But Greg, how do they get started building, shipping, and sharing?
Getting started is the hardest part, like it was for you and for me. You can get started with the AI Engineer Challenge, and you can share it in the Build, Ship, Share channel on Discord. Links in the description. What if they want to accelerate their ability?
Well, we actually have a 10-week intensive bootcamp where you learn to build, ship, and share production-ready LLM applications every single week.
The AI Engineering Bootcamp, cohort starting soon. We'll have you building, shipping, and sharing
like a legend
in no time. We'll see you in class.